Morning, everyone. You're learning Mishna Eruvin, Parakeh chapter 5, Mishnah Daled, Mishnah 4. This Mishnah is going to discuss how we do the actual measuring of 2,000 amas, 2,000 cubits from a city to figure out the Tchum Shabbos. Ein moededin ella bechevel shel chamishim amma. The first part of the discussion is how the actual measuring is done. And that, the Mishnah says, we only measure with a rope of 50 amas long. It shouldn't be less, it shouldn't be more. The commentary of the Bartanura says this is made out of linen, which is strong and does not stretch when a 50 amma rope is pulled taut by two people. The measurers had to pull the rope tight with all their strength, meaning basically they had to pull it tight because we're trying to measure as straight as possible. They did 50 amas at a time with this rope. And this amount of 50 amas with a linen rope was what they figured out was going to be the kind of length of a rope that when you pull it taut, it's not going to stretch and it's not going to sag. If it's less than 50, then it comes out that the rope is going to stretch, and it'll stretch a little bit to be longer than what it should be. When it becomes slightly larger because of stretching than what it originally was. And those who are measuring aren't going to be able to tell that. And it's going to come out, you're going to lose out on some of the 2,000 amas that you should have from the city. If it's larger than 50, the problem is it's going to sag. And if it's sag again, you lose some of the area that you could have had. Therefore, they figured out that a 50 amma long rope is going to be what's going to work properly to get a straight line, with and the most accurate. Next. When you do the measuring, you do it against your chest, meaning you have two people on each side of the rope and they're both holding it against their chest. In this way, it's going to be a straight line. The point is you don't want to get it where one's holding it higher, one's holding it lower, because then it's at an angle and you're going to lose out on the area. So therefore, you have to have two people who are basically the same size. They both hold it by their chest. You have a straight line. Okay. You're measuring. And the problem, and now what happens is that, if the land is, straight and so good. But what happens if you come to areas where there's either a dip or there's a rise? There's like a valley, so it dips down. Now, if you dip down and you measure following the dip, you're going to lose out. That's going to take up some of your. That's going to take up some of your 2,000 amma area length. If it's going to be a rise, it's going to go over that hump. It's going to use up some of the area. So therefore, if you're measuring and you reach one of these areas, and these areas are going to be an area that you can still stretch your rope, your 50 amas that you want to, mavliya, you can absorb it. That means you could just go straight over it and count it as if it's straight. And then you go back to where you were measuring. Now, this is talking about a different case. I don't know if you can see these pictures well. Usually kind of hard to hold it up properly. But, okay, if you look at this picture, this is a picture of where you have a dip. You have the two measurers on each side. They're holding the rope against their chest. It goes straight over. That's how you keep your counting going 2,000 amas from the city. In this next picture, you have a hump. You have a rise. In this case, clearly, it can be high enough that you need to raise it above your chest and on a pole. Okay, that's what you do. Now, this case over here, this last case, is a case where this dip, let's say this valley, at one point, it's not even, which means that right across from where the city is, it's more than your 50 amas. But if you go further down the valley, you'll have an area that's not as wide, and you'll be able to put your 50 amma rope over it and measure it that way. So I really am supposed to be measuring straight from opposite the city, but it's not going to work with what I have. So therefore, the Mishnah means to say, as they depict here, when you come to the point where it's too wide to measure, you walk a straight line to the area where it'll be narrow enough to measure over that area, walk a straight line back to the area opposite the city and continue from there. So instead of, trying to, let's say, estimate that area, instead, you'll be able to measure it in that way. That means you go back to your measurement. Even though you kind of have to now go over to the side, you're still trying to figure out opposite the city. So even though you have to go over to the side now to be able to do that, we'll go over to the side and then come back to where you need to continue from. Now, the Mishnah now says the following scenario, which is in somewhat a repeat of what we had, but there's some additions to it. Higia lahar. Now, let's say you came to a mountain. This means more like a hill. Mavliyai. So again, you'll absorb it. And go back to your measure. As we said, if the area opposite the city is going to be more than 50 cubits long, it's going to be long. It's longer than or wider actually, more than your 50 amma rope. So you move down to the area where the rope could go over, the 50 amma rope could go over, and you come back. But only if you do not go outside of the tchum. Now, that means it's like this. They're not doing this on Shabbos. But the point, though, is that if the measurers will land up in order to, again, find that more narrow area, are going to go 2,000 cubits away from the city, so people are going to see the measurers going there and measuring from there, and they're going to think that the Tchum Shabbos, that the boundary for Shabbos in the city goes as far as that, and it really doesn't. It doesn't. It can be from the point of what they're trying to accomplish. We don't care if it's 2,000 cubits away from the city. We're just trying to find an area where we can continue measuring with the 50 amma rope, and then we'll come back to the proper area. For our measuring purposes, it doesn't matter that it's outside of the tchum. But because those measurers are measuring from there, it gives the impression to people that the tchum Shabbos goes out there, and that's going to be a mistake. So that's what it means. If you're going to go out, you're going to go away to find a more narrow area and do this, it has to be that you're not going outside of the tchum. So if you want to be able to do this absorbing and of moving over and then coming back, it can't be that you're going further than the tchum, than the boundary that you could walk to on Shabbos from the city. Then the Mishnah says, and let's say you can't absorb it, because let's say this is the scenario that in order to find the area that is narrower than the 50 amas, you're going to have to go outside of the tchum, and therefore you can't do that. It's in this case that Rabbi Daistai said in the name Rabbi Yanai, the name Rabbi Meir, Shamati shemakadrin baharim. I heard that you make a hole through the mountains. Now, you can't make a hole through the mountains. It's too hard. But you're going to do something that's going to be the equivalent of making a hole through the mountain. Meaning what you really want to do here is, you don't want to have to go over include the whole slope of the mountain as you measure. You'd want to go straight through that mountain and get a rope, get that 50 amma rope through that mountain, or every 50 ammas measure through the mountain and get to the other side. That's what you really want to do. But you can't do that. So you got to do something that's equivalent to that. And this is what you do. I will read it to you. The actual measurement is done with a rope that is only 4 ammas long. Okay, with the measuring I'm going to do now, to be able to go to to count the mountain without its slope for the 2,000 cubits, you're starting off with a rope that's only 4 ammas long, 4 cubits long. One measurer stands at the foot of the mountain, and the other stands a little higher up the slope. The one lower down holds the rope to his chest, while the one higher up holds it to his feet. The rope is thereby held in a straight line, and the slope of the mountain is not counted in the measurement of 4 ammas. The measurer who is on the bottom then climbs somewhat higher up the mountain, and they again measure in the same way, repeating this as many times as necessary until they reach the bottom of the mountain on the other side. Measuring a straight... Okay, so take a look at this picture. This picture here. You see, you got one person on the bottom. He holds her up to his chest. The other person has it by his feet. I have a straight line. This person now is going to come up higher, and he's then going to hold it. The middle person, this person is going to hold it straight to his chest, and he's going to hold it by his feet. And this is what you're going to keep doing throughout the mountain to be able to keep you're to be able to keep measuring with a straight line. And this is, if you do this, over the hill to the other side of the hill, that'll be the equivalent of going through the mountain. Now, the Bartanura points out something like this. He points out that in order to do this, this mountain or hill cannot be too steep. It has to be sloped. And it's considered not too steep when for every 5 amas that you walk up the mountain, the rise is only 10 tfachim for 5 amas. But if it comes to a point that you'll be going less than 5 amas, and it rises 10 tfachim, then you cannot do this absorbing. You're just going to have to estimate. Doing it with the string is the way of doing it in a way that is the most accurate way of as if you're going through the mountain. But if you can't do it because it's too steep, so then we say you're going to have to estimate. You have to estimate, okay, if I were to go through this mountain, how many amas would it take? You want it to be exact, you'll have to estimate in that case. Have a wonderful day.